Welcome, everybody, to the Dave Campbell's Texas Football Recruiting Roundup, where today we will be talking about the SMU Mustangs. With us, as always, we've got Greg Powers from Next Level Athlete, and we're joined today also by a special guest, Damon Sales from Pony Up Rivals. Damon, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, guys. Hope everything's well.
Of course. Well, by the way, glancing at your Twitter account, I don't think I knew this. I just learned that you were just named a former Odessan, a distinguished former Odessan. Excuse me. So congratulations on that. I didn't even know that you were from Odessa, Texas.
Thank you, man. Actually, I lived in Odessa for 3 years, and in that time frame, I just tried to do everything I could just to make an impact, and thought it was real cool that somebody actually took notice in those 3 years. So, there for 2 years for high school, and then there 1 more year for junior college. And in that span, I, got the opportunity to cut my teeth in journalism. So, at 17, got my first check and just kind of been taking over and doing this thing for that long. So, it's an opportunity and it's a blessing. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get right to it. So, you look at SMU's class right now, 12 kids signed, 2 other kids committed. Let's start with you, Damon. When you look at this class right now, what are some of the biggest takeaways that you have for it?
Well, I think first and foremost, when you look at it, you're looking at a class loaded with offensive linemen. Of the 12 signees, 7 of them are going to be blocking for the quarterback. So, that's something that Sonny Dykes wanted to make sure that he had some horses up front. And if one can't get it done, he's going to have somebody that he can bank on to make sure that the job gets done. And, you look at this offensive line class, I mean, you've got some guys who have serious potential to get some early playing time. Guys like Granson Hickman from Jesuit High School in Dallas can play center, can play guard. You've got a guy like Dimitri Jordan from Tyler Junior College, who to me is the most ready offensive lineman of those 7. Right at 6'4", a little more than 300 plus pounds. A guy who can come in and be that guard, and I believe they're looking for a guy to come in and take that guard position for the 2020 year. So you've got those 2 guys. Aaron Smith is another guy. He was a player who a lot of the Mustang fans were really excited to ultimately land because there was talk of him potentially swaying, possibly staying close to home. He's from North Little Rock, Arkansas. I know the Razorbacks were pretty high on him in an 11th hour type of recruiting perspective. But for him to sign, that's a huge win for the Mustangs. So they've got tons of offensive linemen to choose from this class. And now it's time for them to build up on the skill position guys. And they've got a couple of good ones already signed, but I think they're looking to maybe possibly add some more guys to the pro.
Greg, when you look at this class, a lot of Texans, obviously, as SMU is wont to do. What kind of stands out to you about the makeup of this class?
Well, I kind of like how they closed on and around the first national signing day. They were able to reel in DCTF top 100 member Thaddeus Johnson from Beaumont Westbrook. He's one of the better on the hoof guys that you'll come across. He's one of those guys who's well put together at around 6 foot, 180 pounds. I think he's the highest rated prep prospect in the class per the Rivals.com rankings as well. So you're talking about a guy who can come in and probably play on either side of the football, wide receiver or in the defensive backfield, in my opinion. I've seen him work out at both of those spots in camps, and he's one of those highlight type of guys in this cycle. And then also to be able to flip or get Danny Gray off of the TCU commitment list and to be able to bring him into the fold. He's a guy who could come in right away and be able to be that guy on the offensive side of the football that you could point to and say he's going to pick up big yardage vertically down the field, make big plays, and press these defensive backfields to try to stop him. He's that type of guy. Whenever he was coming out of high school, he kind of blew up and was a guy that all the big-time programs really wanted. So Danny Gray was a huge signing, I believe, for SMU.
Damon, when you look at this class, obviously Greg mentions Danny Gray and Thaddeus Johnson, the 2 top-rated guys in this class per Rivals. Who are some of the other guys that you see as being some of the top guys in this class?
First of all, let me add that Greg hit the nail on the head with Danny Gray. I mean, when we're talking about a replacement for James Prochet, who did everything for the Mustangs on the offensive side of the ball, you've got to look at a guy like Gray with his speed, with his ability to run routes, his ability to produce yards after the catch. This guy is the real deal, and as long as he continues to flourish and stays healthy, he's going to have an outstanding career at SMU. Now, to answer your question, when you're looking at some other guys, one guy in particular I'm looking at is DeVere Levelson, and he's a defensive end from Tyler Junior College, teammates with Dimitri Jordan, and these two guys are college ready, and there's really nothing else to say about that. DeVere is a guy who probably should have played D1 football as a freshman, but he made the decision to take it to the junior college route. Everyone's asking, why'd you do that? Well, he just wanted to make sure that he was prepared, just physically and just from a mental perspective. He wanted to make sure that he was prepared for next level ball. Now, once he stepped on that field, he produced. He showed everything, or showed everybody that he was capable of being that stud on the defensive line. And the good news for SMU, or the bad news for SMU, is they're losing some key defensive linemen. You're losing a guy like Delonte Scott. You're losing a lot of deep tackles. Zach Abercrombie, Demeric Gary, guys like that. Pono Davis. DeVere Levelson's a guy who can come in and play both defensive end and defensive tackle. It really depends on how they want to use him. He can be one of those smaller D tackles who can get around offensive linemen, but I believe his classic position and where he can be quintessential is going to be that rush end, and he's a playmaker. You got to remember, this is a guy from DeSoto High School, so when it comes down to playing big boy football, he's been doing it. He knows how to do it, and I expect him to come in and deliver for Sonny and the rest of the staff.
Also had big-time offers, Damon. Arizona, Illinois, Minnesota had a great season this year, Nebraska, Virginia Tech. So SMU was able to beat out some P5 schools, and whenever you can get that type of talent and infuse it into your program, I think that you expect them to be an instant impact type of guy.
Absolutely, and I love his attitude about it too. When you asked him, why did you choose SMU? Because that seems to be not necessarily the local question, but more of the national question for those pundits who are still having a hard time believing that this is an SMU team that won 10 games in 2019. And the question that he tends to answer is, why did you choose SMU over these Big Ten schools and, some of these other schools that you had the chance to go to? And his answer is pretty simple. He wants to be an impact player, and he wants to play close to home. So, you can't get any simpler than that. And it's a huge recruiting win for SMU. And I'm expecting the Mustangs to get a few more big-time commitments from the Dallas area and just from the surrounding areas in the next couple of years. As long as they continue to keep doing what they're doing, which is producing on the football field, getting wins, and having people pay attention to what they're doing.
Greg, one guy that I want to ask you about is maybe the biggest name in the class, former Allen quarterback Raylan Sharp. How do you project him to the next level, and what do you think SMU is going to try to do with him?
Well, I think he's a slot receiver at the next level. You were able to see what he was able to do with the football in his hands for one of the most prominent 6A programs in the state this year. Very exciting player. He's able to make moves in the open field, but he's also a guy who didn't sign in the early period, so I'm glad that we have Damon on to maybe shed some light if things are still moving in a positive direction with Raylan Sharp, and is that a player who we can probably expect to sign whenever February comes around. That's why we have the experts on, and I know Damon's very dialed in.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk to him not too long ago, and I asked him a couple of tough questions regarding the commitment and why the commitment didn't turn into a signing. And right now, he understands fully that he is committed to SMU, and when you ask him, he'll tell you he is very committed to SMU, very solid with his pledge. But I think right now we have to also remember two things. Number one, he is a 5'9" quarterback. So the last guy to do it at his size was some guy by the name of Kyler Murray. I don't know if you know him, Greg, but he's pretty good. not a bad football player, but for Raylan to do what he was doing, and then to also be an Allen high school player, it kind of gives you the sense: can we get a version of Kyler Murray 2.0? I don't think that's going to be the case per se, but at the same time, Raylan Sharp is an outstanding football player, and I agree with you, Greg. I think his where he can lay foundation will be at that slot receiver position. He can get a lot of early playing time there. The question is, does he want to play quarterback at the next level? And if that's the case, maybe this is why he's holding out. He wants to see, what else is out there. And we also have to remember that Raylan's a very good track and field athlete. So we have to remember that, SMU, from track and field, we're talking about the women's team. So he's looking around possibly, can I run track someplace? So there's a lot of questions, but when it comes down to whether or not he is still interested in SMU and still very solid with his pledge, the answer is yes, but we have to respect that, there's plenty more to his decision than what we're looking at on the surface. So we'll give him time, and hopefully we'll see him. We'll see him commit. We'll see him sign in February, and it'll be a real nice get if the Mustangs can land him.
We can't have you on this program, obviously, without talking about the biggest 2021 commit that SMU got just a few weeks ago. Preston Stone, how big of a difference maker is that kid for this class, and also obviously heading forward for SMU?
Preston Stone, never heard of him. Have no idea what you're talking about. So, I tell you what, there are so many people out there who are wondering if Preston Stone is the guy in regards to, and I'm not just talking about the 2021 class, I'm talking about the best commitment that SMU has ever seen. Now, to me, and if you ask Preston, it's a slap in the face to a guy by the name of Eric Dickerson, maybe a guy named Craig James, Harvey Armstrong, guys like that. But in the modern era, there isn't a commitment that SMU's gotten so far that has the potential to be that guy like Preston Stone does. And, we saw what he did this past year, won a TAPS Division I state championship, put up insane numbers, also showed that he can run the football. He had an outstanding game on national TV on ESPN and, pretty much showed everybody that this is what I do and this is what I can bring to a program. Preston Stone is legit, and it doesn't take a whole lot of people to co-sign that. You just got to watch the film. There's a reason why he wears the number 2. He pays homage to Johnny Manziel, and there's a lot of magician, a lot of prestidigitation, so to speak, when we're talking about him running the football and getting out of trouble. When he's outside the pocket and making defenders miss, and there's a lot to love. Not just there's a lot to love about Preston Stone. And the thing about him, this 2021 class understands how good he is. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few high 3 stars and a couple of 4 stars commit to this program just to play with him. It's a huge get for SMU. And I know every time somebody mentions Preston Stone to Sonny Dykes, there's a big smile on his face because he knows the type of player that he's got.
Well, I think he's the first junior to ever announce a decision during the broadcast of the All-American Bowl, which is a huge thing in and of itself. Great brand recognition for SMU as he slid that cap on national TV. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I think that he could be a foundation or lay some foundation for what SMU is going to build around in its 2021 class. And Preston probably has to get a big smile on his face when he looks at all the offensive linemen that we talked about at the beginning of this segment who signed in the 2020 class. So he's a local hometown hero. He's a guy who lives right down the road from SMU, so he's getting to stay home and play his college football in front of all the people who he knows and loves. So I think it's a huge thing in and of itself that they're able to just keep a quarterback, the most prominent position on the field, at home and playing in the local program. So it's a huge win for SMU. It's a pretty big win for Dallas.
Damon, when you look at this class, obviously a small class right now, how is SMU going to use those remaining scholarships? Obviously, last year they were big on the transfer market as well, finished out strong in recruiting as well. How do you expect them to finish out?
Are you talking about 2020 or 2021?
In 2020, yes.
Okay. So 2020, obviously, there's a couple of names out there to keep an eye out on. One guy who I'm really paying attention to is Savion Williams, wide receiver, athlete out of Marshall High School. East Texas kid, big East Texas kid, 6'4", 200 pounds. Played a lot of quarterback in high school, but, I mean, this guy is going to be – he's going to ultimately be a wide receiver, a big possession-type guy, somebody who can definitely move the chains for this program. You've got him. Another guy who I'm really keeping an eye out on, and he'll be at SMU this weekend, Junior Aho, kid out of New Mexico Military Institute. He's a defensive end. He's from France. So there's a lot of people who still trying to figure out what it is about him that programs are really interested and intrigued about. He's a one-time Nebraska commit and somebody who's going to be making his very first official visit to SMU. So that's the big advantage for the Mustangs. Hopefully they can lay the foundation and put on an outstanding show, lay that proverbial red carpet, so to speak. If they get him, you're getting a 6'3", 255-pound guy who is he's an athlete. I mean, this guy was a boxer. He played soccer. He was on the French national team for playing football. This guy can play. He's an athlete. And if you can get a guy like him, it's somebody who definitely benefits that defensive line. And again, I mentioned before, they lost some key players on that line. He's a guy who can come in and get some early playing time immediately. That's how good Junior is.
One guy who I'm watching on the defensive side of the ball pretty closely is a recent offer, Brian Massey from Katy, Texas. SMU just offered him within the past week, and I know that they've identified him as a cornerback prospect who can come in and lock down and has the size to lock down some of the best wide receivers in their conference. So that's one who I think we might see heat up as the recruiting home stretch gets going here over the next couple weeks. I do know he announced his top list before SMU offered, but I think the Mustangs are now one of his more intriguing offers.
Well, you can follow Damon on Twitter at Damon Sales. You can find all of your SMU recruiting news at thehilltopics.com. Damon, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
And we'll be back again to talk about another school next week.